The European Union is set to announce a deal to import more natural gas from the U.S. That new supply will replace Russian shipments that the bloc wants to eliminate over Moscow's military operation in Ukraine. According to reports, the U.S. would sell an additional 15 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to Europe this year. That would add to the 22 billion cubic meters a year that American firms already sell to customers in the bloc. But the increase is just a tenth of what European nations buy from Russia, which is the continent's biggest supplier. Another issue is that U.S. LNG firms are already producing the commodity at full capacity. That means the U.S. will have to divert gas that would have gone to other customers, particularly the ones in Asia. Now, despite these logistical concerns, European leaders have highlighted the need to get rid of Russian fossil fuels.
The fact that in a chaotic world we're not alone. In a chaotic world we have European and transatlantic partners differentiates us from Russia, which at the moment is in fact completely alone, completely isolated.
We have to continue to isolate Putin's economy, Russia's economy, to stop the money flowing into the war machine. If we want to stop the killing in Ukraine, we have to help the Ukrainians fight back, and we have to cut off Putin's economy. The longer we wait, the more difficult it becomes, and the price is Ukrainian lives.
Let's get more now from Craig Erlam. He's a senior market analyst at OANDA in London. Welcome back to the program, Craig. Now, how much of an impact will this upcoming deal really have on markets? Or is this more of a symbolic gesture, given how little the U.S. really ships to the EU?
I would say it's somewhere in between. We have to remember that these processes take a long time. It's very rare that we're in a situation whereby countries are having to redivert sources of energy in such a short period of time. So the EU has set out a target to reduce its reliance on Russia, and this covers about a third of its target for this year. So yes, it's a small portion of what it currently imports, but over time that will come gradually lower. And the target for this year, this covers around a third of it. So it's still a big step, and it's a step in the right direction, which I think is the most important thing. But there are other sources of natural gas. They're in talks with Qatar, with Egypt, and you imagine there's going to be other sources as well. The difficulty for Europe is not necessarily going to be, is this additional US supply enough? It's going to ultimately be, are they actually going to be able to deliver on these promises? But also, does Europe have the infrastructure in place in order to accommodate all this extra supply coming from different sources? That's the challenge that the EU now has over the course of the rest of this year and going forward, as it slowly reduces its reliance on Russia and ultimately cuts it off altogether.
That's right, because much of the U.S.'s natural gas output, isn't it already tied up in long-term contracts to their other customers in the region and to Asia? So what happens to those customers? Are they going to be left without the supply that they need?
Exactly. There's going to be many contracts, so it's hard to almost go into each one individually. But the fact that there is going to be some spare capacity over the course of this year, like I say, this is an ambitious target, but it's one that the US clearly thinks that it can deliver on based on the current contracts that are in place. It doesn't seem that there's an intent at this point in time to actually ramp up its own production, although it wouldn't surprise me if that is something that does become more adopted over time. But if you look at somewhere like Qatar, where there is a strong ambition to ramp up production, there's a lot of investment in the industry to increase production by 2025, I think we are going to see more spare capacity coming online from those kinds of sources. And then, of course, the EU does have other alternative sources as well, which they'll look to invest in themselves. And then, obviously, there's the green aspect as well. There's a huge green push in Europe as they look to reduce their reliance not just on Russia, but also natural gas entirely.
All right, Craig Erlam, senior market analyst at OANDA. Thank you for joining the show.